All right, this is so technical getting this started. This is great. So this is one of our Department of Kinesiology and Nutrition Sciences Behind the Vita podcast. And the purpose of this podcast is to help faculty get to know faculty as well as students to get to know our faculty. And so the idea is to have a conversation with one faculty member, get a little background in terms of academic background, but then also what they like to do outside of work. And today our guest is Gaby Wulf. Hi, Dr. Wulf. Hi, Gaby. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, John.
Good.
Hi, Ted. Thank you
Hi.
for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Excited to have you.
Yeah, so I guess I missed introducing myself. I'm John Mercer, interim chair for the Department of Kinesiology, and got co-host Ted Gerard, faculty member and program director of the Athletic Training and Education Program. Hey, Ted, how's it going?
Good. Yeah, it's a good to be back talking to faculty. This is great. We've done a couple in a row, so this is we're kind of getting into our groove now.
Yeah, and this is going to be fun because Gaby has been here almost the longest out of our faculty.
Yep.
Gaby, when did you come to UNLV?
In 2001, actually a few days before 9/11. So yeah,
great.
I won't forget that. Yeah, so
20 years.
Yeah, 20 years, that's right, yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, I'm really interested in hearing your path to UNLV. So where did you start your academic career, and where are you from even originally?
Yeah. Originally, I'm from Germany, and I got my education in Germany. So I went to the German Sports University in Cologne. It's a pretty unique place because it's the only university that is just, for sports sciences. Mm-hmm. And so it was challenging to get in, and because, they have the top faculty in this field there, and many, athletes in Germany went to school there. So they had some, it was challenging. You even had to take tests to take activity classes there to get into those classes.
Oh, wow. That's that's different. Now, so that would be equivalent to our undergraduate training.
Yeah, except that they don't really distinguish between undergraduate and graduate training.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little different there in that system. But I got, a degree that's equivalent to a master's degree first. We call it diploma. And then when I was finished, they had a new doctoral program. So originally I wanted to be a PE teacher, I guess. But when I had my first degree, I didn't really know what to do. And so because they had this new doctoral program, I just decided to go on and get a PhD and then, go from there.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that original interest in PE. So that's what I was going to check in with you. What drew you to even apply to that institute or try to get into it? What was it?
I grew up playing sports, right? I started with track and field and played tennis. I swam. So yeah, that's what we did back then. We played a lot of sports. Many people did. Yeah. And I guess I became fascinated with sports skills. Yeah. When you learn sports skills, you never forget. I've always found that fascinating, right? Other things you tend to forget. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to skills that you've learned, even if you don't perform them for a few years, like skiing, right? Mm-hmm. You go back and you still know how to do it.
Yeah.
A few minutes to warm up. And so I always had this interest in sports. And
well, Gaby, don't undersell the University of Cologne. It's really interesting in the world of triathlon, which both John and I are interested in. Many of the world leaders in triathlon and endurance sports and cycling and marathon all have had their training at University of Cologne. I mean, it is really it's a big deal in our world. Yeah. And so it's a very prestigious university. I think sometimes in the United States we don't appreciate institutions that are outside of the United States, but that is a spectacular institution from my understanding in the world of sports science.
Well, that's interesting to hear that. I didn't realize you were familiar with it.
Very much so. A lot of the leaders in the industry are coming out of there or have came out of there. So that's exciting. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I love this interest in even in early in your career about motor skills, and I can see where your interest in motor learning and motor control have started. But what did change you from pursuing more of a PE, a physical education type degree, to something more research based?
Yeah. I guess, when I was working on my PhD, I mean, I was reading a lot. I mean, I had to take additional classes and all those things, of course. And but I was reading, reading, including many English, papers. And I just tried to find a topic that I found interesting, to come up with a topic for my dissertation. So I didn't really have an advisor I had an advisor, but it was really up to me to find a topic that I would find interesting. And so I did find one, and it was related to, I developed an interest in the so-called schema theory of motor learning that was proposed in 1975 by a famous guy in our field, Richard Schmidt. So I decided to kind of follow up or test his schema theory. And then I had to talk my advisor into letting me do this, and but it worked out okay. It was pretty much on my own with all the, doing the study and writing and analyzing data and all those things. But
oh, that's so great to hear. And what I love, and I hope students pick up on this, is that to find the topic you read, and that's some of the best, the advice, that best advice that was given to me in a PhD program is read everything, and I tried to pass that on to our students as well. All right, so what happened? You finished your PhD work, and I guess I'll jump ahead. I mean, you were internationally known for this idea of acquiring skills and things that influence control. But what was the next step for you after completing your PhD?
Yeah, I wrote up a paper in English, my first paper in English. I sent it to Richard Schmidt, who was at UCLA at the time, and I asked him if I could work with him. So that was all via snail mail, right? We didn't have email back then. Right. But he wrote a nice letter back and said, yeah, sure, you'd be, I mean, yeah, come here, but you need your own funding. So he didn't have money for me. So I had to get a grant, and I applied for a postdoctoral grant to the German Science Foundation. I wasn't successful though. And so somebody informed me about a different mechanism, I guess. So I tried again. But while I was waiting for the outcome of that application, I just decided to go to UCLA. I had some savings, and I, bought a flight ticket, and I got on a plane. It was my first flight ever.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was an exciting time. So I went there. I worked there for a few months while I was waiting for that, to hear about my grant. And anyway, I got lucky. I got the money. So I ended up spending actually 4 years in Los Angeles. The first 2 years as a postdoc in Schmidt's lab, and then I had a job at USC, University of Southern California, in human factors. Worked on motorcycle accidents, and then the fourth year I was a research assistant at UCLA again for a couple of professors there, and I was really looking for a faculty position in, California ideally, but I interviewed, I wasn't successful. And then because I didn't have a job, I couldn't get my visa renewed, so I had to leave the country. So that was really tough. Anyway, I had to go back to Germany without a job initially, and but I got lucky again because I got a job in Munich at the Max Planck Institute for Psychological Research. That was a fantastic job. It's a great research institution, and I spent almost 10 years there. unfortunately, those positions there were also limited in terms of, you could only spend a few years there. So I had to find another job. I got a lecturer position in England, University of Reading, and spent a year and a half there. But it was really raining a lot there, and I didn't like that. There were some other things I didn't like that much. So I ran into Mark Guadagnoli. John will remember him. I don't know about Ted, but he used to be in our department. He was a chair at the time. And he told me about a faculty position there. So I applied and fortunately got the job. And yeah, that was 2001 when I came here.
That is quite the path. I mean, that is an international path. If we connected those dots, that's pretty interesting. But I want to back up on a couple of things. So you were I love your persistence, and I love taking a risk, and just saying I'm going to go for it. And I think that shows dedication and investment in the in pursuing additional training, and that is really great to hear. And that you've just took a risk and reached out to a colleague. Back then, you're right, that snail mail, we forget how long of a period of time that would have gone for a letter to go to him and then back to you. So that's pretty neat. But motorcycle accidents, what was this about?
Oh, it was another postdoctoral position, and the professor there was trying to figure out, I had a grant from, I don't know what. But anyway, his task was to figure out why so many accidents happen with motorcycles when car drivers turn left and overlook oncoming motorcycles. That's how most motorcycle fatalities happen. And we did some, studies, I guess. We drove around in a car with a camera that looked at the driver's eyes, and pretty low tech, but anyway, we counted eye blink frequencies, and it turned out that left turns are actually pretty attention demanding, and so that was one outcome. It's one explanation, I guess, for the fact that people don't see motorcycles. So.
Well, Ted and I deal with this all the time on our pedaling variety of bikes, and we are always aware of left turning vehicles, and it's even an issue in cycling, in pedaling cycling.
Yeah, I hate those people that are going to turn left. It. It's funny, like it's almost inherent in the pedestrian or the bicyclist that they know that the person that's turning left is not paying attention to the right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, motorcycles or bicycles are rare for one, right? Yep. They're smaller, and so it's really important to wear conspicuous clothing and turn on the headlights on a motorcycle. So.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
so that's a phenomenal thing. I had no idea you did that work. That's so interesting. That's so interesting.
And then that led you to riding a motorcycle?
Yeah, despite that, I did have a motorcycle for a while. Yes, I didn't know you knew that. Yeah, I did. Actually, I rode a lot at Red Rock Canyon and Lake Las Vegas, or not Lake Mead, actually. Yeah, those were my two favorite places in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Ted and I both love riding out there. That is a beautiful area for pedaling and motorcycling. So that's pretty. Well, we sort of touched a little bit on your area of expertise, but tell us a little bit about your research. And you were internationally known. You're a distinguished professor here at UNLV. Maybe just give us a big picture view of your research.
Okay.
And let me actually, sorry to interrupt you, but I also have to add in that your research we've talked about on our triathlon podcast. So
several times, by the way, we've talked about your research on our other podcast.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. What did you talk about?
Reference you often.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess the research that has had the biggest impact, I guess, is the one on attentional focus. So that actually got started while I was windsurfing. That's probably my favorite sport. And so I was trying to figure out, how to perform a certain maneuver called a jibe. And so I noticed that when I paid attention to what I was doing, my own movements and where to put my hands on the boom and where to put my feet and so forth, it just didn't work. I tried and for hours, and it kept falling into the water. And at some point I figured out that when I just focus on turning the board, it worked so much better. So that was a very interesting experience, and I was so impressed by this difference, that my attentional focus made in terms of my performance, that I went back to my lab in Munich at the time, and we did a study to figure out if it was just me who benefited from what we call an external focus of attention. In this case, the movement of the board instead of my own movement. And so the first study got published in 1998, where we confirmed that this was a real phenomenon, the benefit of an external relative to an internal focus on body movement. And we followed up, many other people followed up on those initial findings, and in the meantime, a few hundred studies have been published looking at this difference and trying to figure out what's going on. And in fact, we just did a meta-analysis looking at all the studies that have been published in the past 20 plus years now. And it's a very reliable effect. So that's one area of research.
I gotta be honest with you, I think about it a lot. And it's because of you, to be honest with you. One of the things that I've struggled with is swimming and learning how to swim as an adult. I didn't know how to swim until I was 39. And so I've had many swim coaches. And they always tell you, oh, put your hand here, put your head here. And it's all this, internal focus. And then, so now I always have to think of, okay, what's the external cue here? What's the external thing I can think of? So I'm always converting this, right? And I'm like, I'm waiting for the coach that has read some of this research, right? That can say, here's the external focus instead of always internal. So why do you think that is that, people that are coaches and teaching motor movements always go to the internal focus first? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think that's what people have done forever, right? I mean, that's how they have been taught. That's how they think it's supposed to work. But I have to say, I mean, many coaches now have read the literature, have heard talks and seen podcasts perhaps. And I mean, they're more familiar with this effect now than they used to be, of course. But you're right. I mean, that's what many still do, not just in sports, but in music and physical therapy.
I was going to say, in athletic training, in the therapy and rehabilitation of injury, we teach our students to give cues like that are external focused, and we see better results.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it really does make a difference. Or even when people have a stroke or Parkinson's disease, anybody really benefits from, focusing on the task goal instead of how they're moving. Yeah. In this meta-analysis, we haven't really found any exception to this rule. I mean, it works for anybody, for any skill level. In swimming, go ahead.
I go back to when I was a child, and I can still remember walking down some stairs with a glass of water that was very full, right? And you're looking at it and you're focusing on it and you spill it. And I can still remember, like, this is well before your research. And my mom was saying, don't look at the water, right? Just look at the task at hand. And sure enough, you wouldn't spill the water, right? Yeah. And so this was like, I didn't even know this was internal focus, external focus. This is well before these terms were even coined. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot to it for sure.
Yeah, and definitely don't focus on your hand. Or
yeah, and it's exciting that you've been at UNLV and doing this research for 20 years. It's exceptional.
Thank you.
It is, and like we just said, we've talked about it with cycling on our podcast. We're talking with people about cycling technique, with running technique, and but now I actually learned. Now I know what jibe means. All right, so I've got this video here, and I didn't know what jibe was, but now I understand. This is a term. Okay, so this is some of Gaby's windsurfing right here.
Yeah, so I'm the one with the red sail there.
Okay, this one.
Yeah, so I recently rediscovered this video. I had it on a VHS tape and converted it to MP4. And I was very happy to see this again
Yeah.
because it was an exciting time.
But this isn't the original jibe. This is while you're now experienced
Oh,
windsurfing. Yeah, nice.
that was pretty
Yeah.
slick. That was a jibe, was basically the switch of the sail.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually, the video seems a little slow. It's actually a lot faster usually than this, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the fun, the speed.
Yeah.
And when you have waves and lots of wind, it's so exciting. And that was the best thing I've ever done. It was
I
so
love it.
exhilarating.
And so, where are some places that you've done windsurfing?
Well, this video was taken at Lake Garda, which is a lake, a famous windsurfing lake and sailing lake in Italy, northern Italy in the Alps. So they have pretty consistent wind because they're, between mountains, where that lake is. And so, I mainly went there when I lived in Munich. It was just a 4-hour drive, so I went there a lot. But also I windsurfed in Egypt, and I grew up in northern Germany by the Baltic Sea. So we were just 10, 20 minutes from the Baltic Sea. So I windsurfed there initially. Mostly those places, I guess. So.
Not while you were in England. No.
No. No. There was not that much opportunity, but yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Here, like Lake Las Vegas, Lake Mead, did you ever windsurf?
No. Okay. Initially, I thought when I came here, I thought I would windsurf on Lake Mead, but no, I didn't. No, I never did. Actually, I did bring my board, but I never did. Just too much of a drive, and anyway, no. The wind wasn't as reliable, as it was in Italy, for example. So.
Yeah, they can be unreliable and unpredictable. So we've seen a lot of that. Well, that's really neat. Okay, so now I want to jump back to, this research area, which is fantastic, but then you also teach, and I'm curious as to what are some of the key things that you like to teach undergraduate students and maybe graduate as well, master's and PhD. What types of things do you really like to get across to students when you're teaching a class?
Well, of course, we talk about attentional focus, but also I have 2 other favorite topics, I guess. One has to do with giving learners some autonomy. So letting them choose, for example, when they want to receive feedback or when they want to use some assistive device or view a demonstration or, even small choices that have nothing to do with the task they're trying to learn are very effective. So anything an instructor can do to give learners or performers some autonomy is very powerful. And so that's a topic that I like to talk about. In fact, we're talking about it right now in class. And it's always interesting and fun to see the students' reaction. And I always ask them to try out, or try this out with their friends or family. And it's fun to, when they report back that, they gave their friend a choice and it worked. And, or even those who work in physical therapy settings, when they give, a patient a choice and that had an effect. I love hearing that. So the other favorite topic of mine has to do with confidence. So anything, again, that an instructor can do to enhance the learner's confidence is also very important and really enhances learning. So any type of positive feedback, is more effective than one would think. Instructors often give corrections because they see it as their job to make sure the person learns the right technique. And so often they don't give enough maybe positive feedback by highlighting, good things that the person is doing or pointing out how much they have already improved. So that's also another very powerful variable that many studies have shown to be also critical for optimal learning.
Yeah, I love it. One of the favorite studies I like talking about that you were directing a graduate student in is the influence of feedback during running and influence on running economy. And that was such a neat study where there are basically two conditions. I might not be summarizing it right, but one condition was just let them run, measure running economy. And then the other was to give some feedback. Hey, looking good, great run, things like that. And the running economy got better. And I was so impressed with that. And that result has really stuck with me. And so, yeah, it really is an interesting phenomenon that you've really looked into on this autonomy issue.
Yeah,
I think that happens.
Very well informed. That's right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that study, but that's true. Yeah.
But I think it happens in life, right? Not just in the classroom. These are life things. When someone gives you a compliment or someone gives you a positive, you feel better. You feel good. You feel, it's amazing, like how something small, someone could say, "Oh, that's a nice shirt," and it ups you. And it's amazing that we live in this society where very few people do that anymore. It seems like it's very negative,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You're absolutely right. It enhances motivation, but I also find it fascinating that it has an immediate impact on our performance. And John is right. It affects running economy immediately, as do the two other factors I mentioned. When you give people a choice, they also move more efficiently. They use less energy for force production tasks, for example. And an external focus is the same thing. So it's really amazing how they all have immediate impacts on how well we perform.
Some of the research I've heard is coming out is on professional sports that were played in front of no fans.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, and the impact that had on potentially had on athletes. And I think there's something to that as well, right? When you have the positive feedback from fans, like you do something well and they cheer, and then all of a sudden that's not there anymore. And the differences in performance, and I've heard some research is starting to come out in that area, and I assume it's down the same pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. Mm-hmm.
So COVID has given us some interesting research opportunities, I think.
That's true. Yeah, it's the success experience that is really rewarding, and it's related to dopamine release, and that in turn, facilitates coordination and also longer term learning. Yeah, so that's an interesting observation too, Ted.
Well, I love it. And Gaby, you're so internationally known and you do a lot of international travel. I'm curious where's one of your favorite places to travel to?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I do like to travel. I might, my most exciting trip was probably a couple of years ago. I think it was a couple of years ago when we went to, did a safari in Africa. So that was so amazing. Went on several game drives there, and I just loved wildlife photography too. So I really, really enjoyed that. But I wouldn't recommend that to anybody who is still young, because after that you're spoiled. You want to do nothing else. You just want to do safaris.
Oh, so, interesting.
Other than that, I don't know. I mean, I traveled a lot in Europe, but also in the States, and went to Brazil once, and I don't know.
Oh, I love it. I've never been to Africa, but it's on my list of places to go. But I just haven't, and that's great to hear that it's you go there and then they're spoiled. So that's neat. Well, Gaby, this has been so great to talk with you. I've really enjoyed hearing your academic career and how your pursuit of windsurfing actually ended up influencing some of your research and where you are now. And again, it's just been great to have you on the faculty as a distinguished professor and internationally renowned. So it's really an honor to have you on talking here.
Oh, thanks so much, John. I appreciate the kind words, and I thank you for doing this, John and Ted. I've enjoyed all the other podcasts you've published so far. It's been a lot of fun watching those. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, thanks.